Hi, today I'm going to talk about my favorite game mechanism in Healthy Heart Hospital, a cooperative game where you are running a hospital and trying not to go bankrupt. There are a lot of things that can go wrong in a hospital, and they're all present in this game. But the game is a lot of fun. It's not just a cooperative game about solving problems or mitigating bad things that are happening. It's also a game about you're getting better at different things throughout the game. You are making choices based on timing that are really interesting in the game. And this is one of my favorite mechanisms of the game: the timing with which you draw cubes from a bag. So one of the core mechanisms in the game is that you have this bag full of cubes, and the cubes represent different things depending on where they're placed on the board. And you have the choice at the beginning of every round. You put out some cubes, but during the round, depending on some choices that you make, like which area of the hospital you're going to focus on your turn, you may have to draw some cubes out of the bag. And usually you're trying to get a certain number of cubes. So if you're in the room that's associated with the color blue, you're trying to draw as many blue cubes as possible. But at any given time, there may be a lot of blue cubes in the bag. There may not be many blue cubes in the bag. That's really hard to say. Blue cubes. Try to say that 3 times fast. You don't know how many are in the bag at any time, or you wouldn't. But this is the mechanism. The game allows you to look into the bag, which is a very subtle thing, right? But it's basically the game realizing that players want to look in the bag and want to have that information. And if they don't have that information, then they're kind of blind to the number of cubes in the bag. You can count all the other cubes that are out of the bag and do the math to figure it out, but those cubes are all over the place. So it really slows down the game if you have to do that. And so the game, in a very clever way, recognized probably that playtesters wanted to look in the bag, and the game said, sure, you can look in the bag. You don't know what you're going to draw out of that bag, but you can look in the bag and see, oh, there are a lot of blue cubes in there right now relative to the other types of cubes. Now would be a good time to use the blue room and draw those blue cubes. A lot of the game, and so I've only played this one time, but we just had a lot of fun with this mechanism. It's such a simple thing to be able to look into the bag and kind of guess your odds at any given time. And there's still a ton of tension when you actually reach into that bag. But it adds a whole new level to those decisions. It's a random thing, but it adds a lot of luck mitigation and interesting discussions and decisions about the timing of when you do that. The other little thing I want to mention about Healthy Heart Hospital is the variability, part of which stems from the randomness of the cubes. But it also has a couple different mechanisms, I won't go into all of them, that make every game different than the last. And the one that I really, really loved, as I mentioned, like that blue room that you can go to, and there are different, I think there's a yellow one and a red one, 4 or 5 rooms that you can go to where you're trying to cure the patients in that room. And each one, at the beginning of the game, has a different tile. You randomize these tiles and you put them associated with each of these different rooms. And those tiles change the rules for each of those rooms just a little bit. So one might say, when you draw cubes for this room, black cubes don't count. Black cubes are always a bad thing in the bag that you can draw, and they're not associated with any specific room. But one room might have a tile that says black cubes don't count for this room. So whenever you draw black cubes, they don't matter. So this adds again to the timing mechanism of drawing cubes out of the bag, because you might look in the bag and see, okay, there are a lot of black cubes in here. There are also a lot of yellow cubes. Let's use this time to draw cubes out of the bag using the room that has the black cubes don't count rule. Let's draw them out of the bag now because black cubes aren't going to matter. That's just one example. There's like a dozen of these tiles, and I think they may even be double-sided, where they change the rules of each of these rooms, adding a ton of variability really to the game. I love it when games have a simple thing like that. Sometimes games go too far, I think, with that variability, where everything is a tile that requires a ton of setup and is really fiddly. But Healthy Heart Hospital hits that really nice sweet spot where the setup isn't too bad. It's just a few tiles that you're putting out there. But the things that they do, combined especially with the different player powers, add just a ton of replayability and variability to the game. So if you've played Healthy Heart Hospital, I'd love to hear your favorite mechanism in the game. If you have a game where information that is normally hidden, like the cubes in the bag, is actually opened up to the players in an interesting way that adds more interesting decisions and discussions, especially in a cooperative game, I'd love to hear those examples in the comments. Or you can talk about variability. We've talked about that before on this channel, but I love talking about variability in games, like with the tiles that you place on the rooms in Healthy Heart Hospital. Thanks.